Well, welcome everybody. We were just saying it's really proud to be sat here actually today and able to give a presentation to such a prestigious location. The title today is Creative Technologies Transforming Life Experiences. So stand by because we're going to change your world over the course of the next hour, which is no mean feat. We've got a fantastic team. I'd like to first of all apologise. One of our colleagues had to stand down at very short notice, so I'm really pleased that Alex has been able to step in on my left to sort of take up the mantle in terms of this fantastic topic. We're going to cover quite a lot during this topic. We're going to try and split it into a number of different sections, basically around virtual production, XR, and then looking at the future. Our aim of this is to start looking at some gems of where potentially we are going to go. My name is Jason Larcombe. I'm a strategic project manager for White Light. And the team we have, let me just slide on to the next one. And we have a fantastic team here. From my point of view, White Light is a creative technology specialist. We work across the creative industries, working in bringing technical solutions to life. We get given lots of briefs, we set lots of briefs ourselves as well, and then we work with collaborators to use technology and transform ideas in all sorts of different sectors, whether that's in fashion, whether that's music, whether that's in education, broadcast, experiences, live experiences, etc. So, White Light is part of D&B Solutions, and D&B Solutions is a lovely group of companies that are all extremely like-minded, with worldwide reach. And what we as a company are always doing is looking at the next steps, where we are trying to get to, how can we empower, how can we bring agency to the topic, how can we look at where the next pipeline of people are going to come from, where the next pipeline of technology is going to come from, what are the new ideas. So, as I said, we've got a fantastic team, and I've sort of introduced myself a little bit. I've been working with White Light for quite a while, and I'm the one that's sort of responsible when an idea gets flagged up with a client, and I normally say, yes, no problem at all. And then we all sort of figure out how to do it afterwards. So that's sort of me, and I sort of work across the company in sort of looking at technical solutions, how we can bring, my background is a lighting designer for theatre. So I come at this topic from a slightly different creative standpoint. But at the moment, I've sort of pivoted to be looking at new emerging tech. The team we have here is Peter, Alex, and Michael, and I'll let them introduce themselves and just give a little 2 or 3 minute introduction. So first of all, if we can start with Peter, and Peter's from Disguise.
Yeah, so as Jason says, I'm Peter Kirkup. I'm Solutions and Innovation Director at Disguise. And Disguise is really the technology platform that powers a lot of the virtual production technology today, also extended reality experiences for broadcast, and generally used pretty heavily in the live events and theatre industries as well for video mapping, and complex video challenges is what we love. So this type of engagement with White Light as a partner for many years, and then also with CoSTAR, as you heard about earlier on, Disguise is really pushing the boundaries of what's been done in the video space. I lead the team that does all of the pre-sales, demos, presentations, and now also look at innovation for the business. So very excited to talk about the future and how we're going to change the world.
Fantastic. Alex?
Hi, I'm Alex Council. I run a centre, an early R&D XR centre at the University of Portsmouth. We've been open for about 18 months now. We were funded by HM Government through our local enterprise partnership, but we've got a selection of high-tech studios that we are addressing kind of content pipeline and talent pipeline through. We give access to our students naturally, but that's not just on our creative technology courses. That ranges from architecture through to photography, fashion, graphic design, illustration. I want people to come together with the technology with creative problems, and then we can start thinking about how the technology can solve it, not the other way around. The technology should fade away, and then we also extend out. We offer commercial services to generate income for the university. We use our students to work with our clients, and we also support artists and projects where we can. We will give free time to people if it works for us, if we can fit it in with everything. So it's basically just about that rising tide raises all boats mentality, giving people access to high-end technology and allowing them to play and experiment with it and take that content away and figure out what they're going to do with it. So when that cost barrier does come down, because it's more accessible, they've already explored what they can do with that content, and they are informed and can be more agile at making, new content.
Brilliant. And Michael.
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm the founder and creative director of MalfMedia, which is a very small, but interesting content and creative concept house based out of Scotland. Compared to my two colleagues, I can keep it very short. We create concepts and we design content. And for the last 4 or 5 years, we found ourselves somehow in XR and AR space on the forefront of that technology. And that's what we've been operating ever since. And you'll see a few of our projects in the upcoming slides. So.
Brilliant, thank you. And the sort of the natural connection here, White Light's been operating in the sort of virtual production space for a number of years with a product called Smart Stage, which is powered by Disguise, which Alex has in his venue, and Michael's been working on a lot of content for that space. So it's a sort of really interesting synergy in our first sort of foray into virtual production a few years ago. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about that in our next steps. Because, virtual production, we've all been listening an awful lot to that through both the CoSTARs and some of the conversations that have been going on yesterday, and really, really interesting in terms of how technologies are now being shifted from what was a very broadcast-focused sector into the live experience sector and beyond, and how those technologies are very similar, and how some of the challenges that are being borne by the new ideas and the new way that people want to communicate and collaborate. We're finding that sort of VP technology is actually bridging a lot of those gaps. So, I think what would be good, and I think Michael can start a little bit on this, is talking a little bit more about what we've been doing in that particular space, how we've filled the gap, and where we've translated technology, because we're not necessarily using our VP technology in a traditional sense of film and television. We're actually starting to translate that into other medias, and Michael's been doing a lot of work in the academic space in that space.
Yeah, so the picture that you're seeing is from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor in the States. When we were trying to figure out how this whole XR was going to work and LED-based, we never, at least I never thought, hey, the world of academia is going to be very interested in this. We were all aiming for Hollywood and broadcast. So, and our very first customer was University of Michigan. So the very first commercial XR space ever was the University of Michigan, who produce a huge amount of content, online content for their remote students. And they have an MBA program, which is 2 years, and people pay a lot of money to be part of that. And they were creating all their content on a green screen. And so Greg Barker came up to us and said, hey, I want to do this in an LED environment. So we thought, great, we've sold one. And so we moved in there. And 4 years on, they've now installed their third one. Their membership or their student numbers have gone up by 1,600%. And if you know how much one MBA course costs, you can just imagine how much revenue that's generated. But more importantly, their productivity, just by having a more immersive way of bringing across your content and include your students and make them feel part of this course that they're on just by using new technology. It's a really interesting case study, and if you ever get a chance to look it up, I would definitely recommend looking it up. But this is a prime example of how XR or XR technology in an LED-based environment is not just a toy. It's a very productive work environment, which are the results at Michigan speak for themselves.
And just briefly explain how this differs in terms of how you're using this for education versus how potentially the system will be used for sort of standard traditional virtual production and broadcast.
Well, they've got a lot of faculty that have their courses, and so their courses are templates. And so the faculty come up, and so on one evening they can have 4 or 5 different courses, and it's all templated. So the faculty come up, they'll log in they'll link in their PowerPoint, which at the end of the day still drives it, and they bring in the students, as you can see on Zoom classes. And then a student can be singled out and ask their question, and it almost feels like a one-on-one, even though the student might be at the other end of the country or the other end of the world even. So that kind of narrows the distance between two people by using the means that we have of putting them in the same space, albeit not in the flesh, but it's the next best
But
thing that we
students
can
feel
do.
like they're in exactly the same space
They are
as
very
the
much
presenter
involved.
themselves,
Yes,
the
they're
lecturer.
very much involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, and moving forward to Portsmouth, because you've obviously got one of our smart stages as well, and you're using it in a very different way to look at how we can teach the next generation to use technology.
Well, if you kind of, one of the
Let's flip
slides,
through your
I'll
slides
see
and
that this was last minute, so I just threw some slides together, so apologies if they're a bit jumbled and I'm not practiced. This is our main space. I wanted the technology to be visible to anyone that comes in. It's not hidden away in a dark studio, gives us lighting challenges, but it's accessible and people can see it and see what it does. Our students walk through the door next to our screen regularly and go, what's going on? It's visible, it's not tucked away. That was really important. And it has to be a Swiss Army knife. So that's why I didn't want to go just a virtual production stage for film. I wanted it to be accessible to anyone. I want to see how someone on our graphic design course could use this technology, or fashion, or photography, etc. It needs to be accessible. We've got mocap studios as well. So the other thing is we've got lots of other studios on site where we can make content and then deploy it to the smart stage, deploy it to headset, deploy it to XR technology really quickly and be able to explore how content is used. The mock-up there we're doing tomorrow, we've got our Vice-Chancellor doing his address to the university staff tomorrow on our smart stage. So no pressure, that one has to go right because it's going to be live. Fingers crossed, no gremlins. But again, we don't know what's going to come in. We've got volumetric video. So how do you use volumetric video content on a smart stage? Our students who are doing a broadcast show for a local football club, we got one of the players in, we scanned him doing his goal celebration so they could use that. Mixing this content together, this convergent content, which is a term I've been hearing a lot in the last few weeks, but it's being able to play. And we can scan objects, we can scan environments, we can take a 360 camera out, film a location, put it on the smart stage, and then people can interact with it. Really interesting one we had the other day was Wimmering Manor in Hampshire. It's a very old building, and we've got architectural historians looking at the space. We've taken a LiDAR scan of it, and they did a performance piece, movement performance piece on the smart stage, and we filmed it just to explore that interactivity between people and space and history. Very high-level artistic thing. Never seen anything like it before on an XR stage, but because it's sat in our centre and our architecture building is next door and people walk through and talk to us, we can bring these things together really quickly. We have dedicated technicians that run this that can just bring it together as the ideas generate this experimentation and play. And that is informing our education, that's informing our students in the talent pipeline of the future, but it's also allowing people to think about, just communication of ideas using XR. It's not just about, visual effects and special effects. It's about how can I convey an idea? Another thing we did the other day with one of the people from our Institute of Cosmology and Gravitation. He does a podcast every month. And we've built him his own little studio. And he was talking about the difference between Hubble and James Webb telescope. So he wanted to see how big the James Webb telescope is. So we built a scale model in VP and Unreal Engine so he could stand on the James Webb telescope and talk about it. Then he could balance precariously on top of Hubble and talk about that and the differences between it. So it instantly just adds another layer of communication, and all that time he can bring up graphics. It's very informative. He felt very at home.
He felt comfortable.
He was
with his
enthused
space,
by this environment and got into it and raised that enthusiasm level up. So it's lovely to see when the technology inspires. We've got music studios as well, but it's about bringing all that content together and seeing how it affects the way people can come together with it quickly and kind of in an agile way.
And I think that's really interesting. From Peter's point of view, your company develops the sort of technology that pulls that virtual production space together, and also, translates that into scale in many respects in a lot of the projects. Maybe explain a little bit more about some of the projects you've been involved with.
Yeah, well, I mean, Disguise came from a background of live events, so we were known for years for doing things like U2 tours, and now Taylor Swift, Ed Sheeran, all the major artists tour with Disguise. But we've very much kind of horizontalized into working in this XR VP space, but also working in location-based experiences. And the common thread there really is the kind of adaptation of visual communication, be it projection or LED screens, into a space that is then creatively used, whether it be through the lens of a camera in the case of XR or virtual production, or in the case of location-based experiences, it's used for the audience to perceive inside that space. So yeah, we recently did the U2 show at the Sphere in Las Vegas. That's just opened a couple of months ago. We're involved with things like Lightroom, the David Hockney exhibition in King's Cross, but we're also involved with, you know, broadcast studios for the likes of Eurosport, and then, you know, the education applications like Portsmouth as well. So it's a real kind of cross gamut of applications for the technology. The common thread is this kind of 3D geometric behavior of the screen surfaces, and then the treatment of those in a way that makes, a little bit like was alluded to earlier, the technology recede back and the experience come forwards. Absolutely. You know, I think that's really important here. Is this is not about putting technology in front of people, even though the technology is what you're standing on or you're engaging with as a presenter. The experience is what we're striving for. You know, the Hubble telescope is a great evocative example of that. Of, you know, he wants to wobble and he wants to know where he's standing in. So the presenter has that relationship to the content. So the programming that ends up being created is so much richer, because if you shot that on green screen, there'd be a level of, where's my comfort monitor? Have I got my foot on the right place? Did I hit my mark? All of that disappears in these VP technologies. And the same with the experiential stuff. You know, you're trying to place an audience into a space so that they can be absorbed by the content and the storytelling, and not think about the technology and think about, oh, I've got to follow this particular pathway or this particular story.
If I can just add to that, being in a university environment, what I didn't want to have to do with our solution was to solve the whole LED wall display problem and the end display problem. I don't want to have to solve all of those, reinvent the wheel before we can get people coming together with it. So it was very much about allowing people to be quick to get content up, and also then be people on the stage and not be kind of a pseudo sort of tech presenter.
Be as creative as they possibly can without worrying about the technology.
They can be natural, relaxed, and not have to think, oh, am I hitting my mark? Am I doing this? There's not that technical kind of invasion into what they do. They relax almost instantly. The only thing they've got to remember not to do is walk off the edge of the stage, otherwise the illusion is broken. But that's very clearly defined. People relax and they just become more natural on it.
And we sort of see that as our job to deliver as a manufacturer. You know, it's our job to make the technology to a point where creatives can then go wild with it and not feel the limitations.
And I think that's what we're seeing at the moment. You know, I personally, I say a lot, you know, a new language is developing in terms of sort of immersive and creative technology and creative production. We saw that with like the Lightrooms and the outer nets and so on that are going on the MSG Sphere, etc. You know, we're treating everything as a pixel now, and you know, and being able to have absolute control and autonomy over absolutely everything that people see. But what that's also doing is opening up a new creative landscape, and giving people the opportunity to be able to not worry so much about the technology, but be able to see what happens when you pull this technology, put these two technologies together, put them in the same space, or start collaborating using this technology, as in things like the smart stage. And I think that naturally brings us into the next section of our discussion, which is this whole empowering experiences. You know, we're taking VP tech now away from the sort of broadcast scenarios that it previously was used in, and actually bring it into museums, heritage, leisure attractions, theatre, concerts, etc. All these other creative applications, which are highly immersive spaces in their own right, and individual in their own setup and design, but give you the opportunity now to start talking this new language, which I think is really interesting. I'm going to play a little video of something that we did at another technology show called ISE in Barcelona last year. It just gives you an idea of, again, a merging of 2 or 3 different technologies, both virtual production and also audio. So we'll play the video out to start off with, and then hopefully
so what you can see here
we'll drop the volume down after a little while.
ISE is the collaboration between D&B Solutions and D&B Audio Technique to deliver an immersive experience in a demo setting for our potential customers here at ISE. We at D&B believe that immersive...
Yeah, and that's giving you an example of 2 or 3 different technologies that we presently have at the moment and how we are merging those together. We're going to talk a little bit more about audio later on because it's often something that's forgotten. You know, the fact that you get spatial audio, immersive audio, and the importance of audio in our perception and our response emotively to things is often forgotten in the way we present things. So we'll come back to that. But let's take virtual production a little bit further now in terms of how are we looking at now translating this technology into bigger and wider experiences. Michael, you know, you're working on a lot of content. Mm-hmm. And obviously from a content point of view, you have to think very differently about how your audience is going to perceive and experience that.
Yeah, so this particular one, I mean, I know we're going to talk about audio later, but audio is really the driving factor of that experience. Like when we go for immersive, like, and we try and get the canvas as big as we can, because we can, you know, we want to fill every possible pixel that we have, i.e. the sphere and our Wazzle dome, and you know, the more pixels we can fill, the better it is, right? We want to go bigger, bigger, bigger. We want to be inside of that whole experience. We want to feel immersed, right? And audio plays a huge role, and I'm glad we're circling back to that later on, because there's a lot to talk about that. But creating content for a large canvas has also got its challenges. How do we make someone feel immersive and not feel overpowered by it? Right? There's a whole debate about the sphere and U2, and it all looks impressive, but at the end of the day, is it still an intimate concert when the whole thing lights up? Right? How do we feel about that? And so making someone immersive or feel immersed in your experience is using the canvas, but using it cleverly, using it for like if I don't know if anybody of you saw that, but we're taking a camera and flying through a city in real time, and the danger is it becomes, you become disconnected of it because it goes too quick, or it goes too fast, or it's too, you know, disorientating. So there's a careful balance to be struck between surrounding yourself with content and losing that connection, which is a challenge for every content maker. The technology is there, like we have this Sky service and we've got all of that. We can fill millions of pixels in real time, like the dome in Dubai is an amazing example of that. You know, it's this huge dome, and it's the largest interactive experience in the world. Great, ticked off, right? But how do we go forward with that in storytelling? How do we create something that, you know, brings this huge dome down to a scale of a normal human being like you and I, and that we can feel?
And you picked up on one word there, which is really, and I always say that as a lighting design perspective, it's that story. You have to get that story right at the beginning and get that sort of narrative across for you to emotively connect with your audience.
Yeah, the danger is that you lose yourself in technology. I mean, like the BBC Earth experience in London is great, you know, massive canvases, and it's great, but it feels like they forgot there's a story to be told. Like the fox comes out of his little hole and jumps across the prairie. Like, we don't hear it, we don't feel involved with it because we focused on large-scale projections. But I feel we've done that now, and we're now looking to the next big thing. How do we connect with that? And I think there's a danger there of losing ourselves in that. And that's where, like, we need to kind of prioritize storytelling and how do we experience that, and then kind of take a little step back on technology and kind of marry these two together before we move on to the next step, which is our second screen and our phones and our every other experience that there is.
Peter, maybe pick up a little bit more on some of the work you've been doing. I'll circle back to Alex just afterwards, just because I think the education role is really, really important in how we now understand the changes and nuances of how we need to control that technology. But you know, obviously you've been doing some of these massive experiences. How are you finding the feedback? How are you finding things are changing?
Totally agree with Michael. You know, story and experience is what we're all here for. At the end of the day, you know, creating that moment, that spine-tingling moment when, you know, you're sitting in an audience or you're walking into a space for the first time and something happens that triggers that kind of...
And we're finding new mediums to do that.
Physical
now. I think that's
method.
exciting. Yeah.
You know, I was fortunate enough to be very involved with the U2 show, and there's a moment during that show where I've seen it several times, I have a physical reaction to the content because of the level of immersion that's going on, let alone the performance. And, you know, definitely happy to have that debate over a drink about the level of immersion. But the interesting thing there is that for a few years when we were innovating XR technology, and Michael and I collaborated an awful lot with the team at White Light on the early days of this, it was all about the technology. It was all about, you know, doing this for the first time ever and winning innovation awards for the technology and things like that. Actually now, it's about the storytelling and it's about the creativity, and the technology has literally receded. You know, we have a stable, reliable, deployable workflow that means that now the creatives can unleash their juices and go make amazing things.
And do the new innovative, creative content.
And that is always the driving force behind pushing the technology forwards. You know, we don't make technology to make technology. We make technology to make experiences.
To enable.
We have that conversation with creative agencies. It used to be the question, can we do this? Hey, we've got this crazy idea. Is this feasible? I feel like the question's now reversed. Hey, you know, can you come up with an even crazier idea? Because the tech's there. The tech's there. You know, we just need to find clever ways of putting that to use. And I think that's the interesting question that we're going to need to find answers for in the next couple of years as there's more and more tech being, you know, thrown at us. Like, how do we kind of control that a little bit? And how do we never forget that there is this message that we want to bring across? There's a product that we want to sell. There's a story we want to tell. All of that's kind of, I feel from where I'm sitting, from a creative point of view, that's the question that we need to answer going forward. Because the tech, again, my feeling is the tech's there. It's just going to get
there. It's just going to get faster
and
smaller,
quicker and better.
Yeah, absolutely, cheaper, etc. Okay, Alex, from your point of view, because obviously you're producing the next generation, you're inspiring people to come up with those new concepts and so on. But that's, you know, that's a challenge, because what we require in our industry now is very different from what we required in our industry 6 months, a year, 2 years ago. And also, you know, a lot of students may think, I want to go into gaming, and not really understand how that technology or that experience and that learning in that area can be translated through to content creation in Unreal, etc., etc. Talk about some of your, you know, some of your wins with your students, because you've got a fantastic rate. And I love the fact that your students come out, you know, all going to lovely jobs and so on, you know, and all getting great positions in the industry. So you're obviously doing a fantastic thing in the way you're training them. But how do we deal with that as a next step forward?
There's two aspects to it. There's the technical operation part of it, someone who's got to push the buttons and make all of the clever stuff happen, which is getting easier with the technology. But it's also teaching them how to work with people, how to come together with different disciplines. If it's a cinematographer coming to you with a preconception about prime lenses and, you know, the look on the screen, is it a theatre performer, a dancer? You know, like I said, this Wimmering Manor thing that we did the other day, which was, we were all stood around because it was very high contemporary art movement. So we're all stood there as technologists. We didn't quite understand what was going on, but to see the level of interaction with the people and the screens and see them explore the content in that way.
That's the exciting part,
Yeah,
isn't it? Once you
absolutely.
get collaboration and interaction.
And it's almost that sensitivity to that interface between people coming together with technology and allowing that to happen, rather than it being fixated on a technological solution or a bell and a whistle that we can do. If you can do it with somebody, you know, with a physical object, because theatre coming together with this technology, you know, it's not there to replace. You know, this technology is never there to replace anyone. It's there to make the story enrich,
give opportunities. Yeah.
So remembering where the performance comes from, people interacting on a stage and giving them those tools. You know, making sure that we're, you know, if you're listening on show cans and you're doing physical cues, there's no need to replace a lighting operator on a lighting desk because we could automate it. We can still do that. We can throw surprises in with someone who's watching a person, watching their performance. Reacting, that physical reaction. And I think that's the most fun place, is when you get that. You keep the real thing that we used to do with lights and shadows, but now we're doing it with LED walls and lights and but there's still that physical performance going on,
behind it,
and it comes together.
Yeah,
human-centered, and that, you know, that reactiveness that we can do. That it's very difficult to train technology to respond. You know, been part of shows where it's like, oh, can we automate that? And all a performer's got to do is naturally put a little bit of variation into their performance, and they've missed an auto cue, and everything starts falling down in sequencing. So if you keep that to a manual cue and keep that manual input, the people whose job that was don't then feel excluded by the technology because they're still doing a meaningful thing and bringing their skills together with
something even bigger to life.
Yeah, and they bring new ideas to it as well by combining a traditional art and technique and showing them the potential of the new technology. That's where the really exciting stuff happens. The happy accidents, I call them, when you're there, because the tech does then drive an idea, because I could do that. It's an enabling an idea. It's not a gimmick. It just becomes an enablement.
I think one of the interesting things, you know, that you're naturally segueing into the next section, which is great, but one of the interesting things is interactivity. That's one of the key words that you're talking about. And a lot of the presentations, even sort of the U2 presentation and so on, it's still passive. It's still there. You can't change it. It's still just going to do exactly the same thing night on night. The next step is, how does the audience, the human, start interacting with that and having some form of control over that? And you know, we sort of said the next thing being sort of AR, the pending explosion of devices. And I'm not saying this is what, you know, this is probably not what's going to drive the next step forward, but it's going to open up a new opportunity now to be able to experience content in another different way than we've had the linear form of the mobile phone, etc., up until now. But what it's also, it's going to continue that sort of language development of what we believe to be immersive, what we believe to be the emotive response to this style of content. The other challenge we have, I think, is just adoption. You know, and until we get to the point where 70-80% of the people in this room are quite happy to consume content in some way, we can produce as much as we like, but we now need audiences to come to the table and say, but this is how we want it. And we're still very much in that early stage at the moment of, how do people want to consume this information? How do people want to experience it? Is every you know, school child in 10 years' time going to be going to school wearing something like this? You know, there are lots of political and there are lots of ethical discussions around that. There's also a lot of technological discussions around it, but it's that next step, isn't it?
Well, Jason, there's a lot of ways of consuming content, right? We have, the choice is ours. We have the VR goggles, we have the AR goggles, we've got our phone, we've got, like, there's so many platforms now that can produce, or that you can use to produce content. The race is on who is going to have the most attractive package, right? Personally, I'm not a big believer in VR glasses because it's a very personal experience, and I just don't see how, when you cut off all humanity and you put people in a private bubble, I'm not a big fan of that. I do believe in AR glasses. I do believe in second screen experiences. Yep. I do think we're heading towards a world where, you know, getting the message out in different platforms is going to become very important. Like, if I may illustrate a small example, your second screen experience, right? If you imagine buying a ticket for a concert these days, like, you're looking at what, 200, 250 pounds heading there, right? You want more. You want more for that, right? You just don't want to head to Wembley and eat a half-stale sandwich, and you want more for that. So a couple of days before the concert, on your ticket, there's a QR code, right? And you scan that. And on your phone, on the table in front of you, there is someone appears, a volumetric capture appears of the singer of the band saying, hey, you know, I'm glad you're coming to see us in 5 days or in 4 days, or this can all be programmed. Here's do you remember when we last played Wembley? Here's a video, right? There's a way of telling a story using the technology, volumetrics, AR, all of that, and then you kind of build an experience towards the day of the concert. So for that same £250, you know, you now have 5 days of content and experience every day at 1 o'clock.
And number of touch points with the organisation or whatever, yeah, absolutely.
That's the way it is.
Yeah.
The same with, like, we're all going to, at some point, in your home, in your family home, imagine average family, two parents, 2 children, and each of them is looking at the same show, but on a different platform. Someone's looking at it in a VR goggles. Someone's got it, broadcast on the kitchen table on his
And I think
tablet.
that's really exciting,
Yeah.
not just for that entertainment market, but museums and heritage. I spend a lot of time in museums, and I watch people walking around consuming the little plaques of interpretation. It's hard sometimes for an 8-year-old to read something, and also somebody might want more information or in a different language or whatever, and that becomes personalised. And I think the technology is there to be able to enrich an experience. And yeah, as you said, it's not just about just turning up at Wembley at 6:30 in the evening, going for a pint and then going and watching it. It's about that anticipation of the event, which is what we sort of used to get a little bit in theatre as well, that sort of walking there, the sort of the journey there, the what's it going to be like, etc., etc. And we sort of lost that a bit during COVID because everything got switched on to our meeting. And then switched off again immediately after. And it's that journey that I think is really exciting.
Jason, I do think that nasty period that we've had has helped this move forward.
Yeah.
I, like we would never conceive working from home. It would be hard to sell, right? Well, we'll work from home, But now we kind of don't mind it anymore. Now we're like, and same with Zoom technology, same with virtual meetings. Those couple of years of whatever it was have helped move this forward.
It did force our hand, absolutely.
It
did force our hand, absolutely.
We had to react really quickly to it, and then, so content could keep going and start thinking about these new areas.
Yeah, and I think we wouldn't have had the opportunity to have done that if we hadn't had the push, as it were.
It's only going to
would
get...
have come, but maybe maybe
much
a couple
longer,
years later. It was moved forward. It wasn't ready. It was clunky. But it made everybody think: how can we keep doing what we do from a distance?
So you were talking, Michael, about the various ways of consuming. Peter, you've been working on a particular project, again consuming information, having a different connection.
Yeah, I mean, so this was a project we did in collaboration with the team from Snap, so Snapchat, where this is the SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, and for the games that they've been playing over this season, they've been doing an augmented reality experience in the space, powered by Snap's engine. So Snap's engine was traditionally written for the on-device rendering, for doing the little facial avatars and things like that. But actually they're moving into a world where that becomes an integral part of the experience. And once they've got connectivity to the experience, then it's about what do you do on the devices? How do you bring that a layer deeper? So how do you bring it to the consumers? If you look around the audience at a Taylor Swift concert or something like that, 90% of them are holding their phones
Exactly.
up.
They're all on their phone.
They're filming the event. They're consuming the event through their phone. They're actually not consuming it in person.
Yeah.
So how do you augment that? Augmented reality traditionally meant watching a broadcast stream and having stuff pasted in front of the camera. Now it's about the on-device. How do you create that experience and that moment for the consumer, but still tie it into what's going on in the space? And that would be highly relevant in the museums and heritage sites space, being able to add layers of information or add layers of interaction.
It just becomes also a process of control of technology. One of the challenges in years past is the technology's been too clunky to be able to achieve it. Now, anybody can do a QR code and something can come to life and so on and so on. We've got to that point.
We've gone too far down the rabbit hole. You will not have these kids put their phone away in a concert. It's not going to happen. So why not build on that and say, well, hey, if you can choose program A, and this song is brought to you by, I don't know, Budweiser, right? Yeah. And then in the screen, you have these experiences on the screen, because we can. On the LED screen, there's a whole different piece of content than the one that's actually playing out in the stadium. And that's how we're going to use all these devices to our advantage.
Alex, how are you finding, you're obviously training the next generation, so you're getting students coming through of an age, well, certainly not that age anymore, and how are they looking at wanting to do things differently with devices and consume things in a different way? Because they should be leading the charge in that respect.
Sometimes they're the leaders, but I think it's just this natural acceptance of this technology. They just come with that. They are coming in a new generation of ways of consuming media. Yep. So they're not coming to us and saying, I want to do this new innovative thing. They're coming with that because they're doing it already, and they want to put some content into that thing that they're doing already. And we're not, it's me that's not used to.
And often they can do so much more at home than they can do anywhere. And that's one of our challenges as a professional creative industry is that the phone nowadays, the latest phones can pretty much do anything you want. We become a little bit more risk management because we just put large amounts of technology in place to ensure that the large experience works.
I had someone say to me the other day, you're trying to use I don't think they were trying to trip me up, but they were saying about, how do you use this new technology with knitting? And I actually could give them an example. One of our students does knit bombing, so they go out and they knit bomb, they knit things around trees or post boxes.
Oh, that's what it is.
Then they take out their iPhone and scan it using Scaniverse and then upload it to Sketchfab. So their knit bombing is online and they've instantly got a 3D version of it. It's not just a photograph anymore. They can go out and knit bomb, scan it in 3D on their iPhone, put it up, and then start making content with that.
Interesting.
And they're just doing that naturally because their phone is in their pocket and they've utilised it. And I'm the one going, wow, that's amazing. They're not thinking that as wow moments.
No, they're just thinking
They're just thinking this is what we've got to do.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, the on-device 3D scanning is incredible now. We were talking earlier about Gaussian splatting and the Nerf technologies that are emerging for 3D rendering is just mind-blowing. You can create visuals from what would have traditionally been a very prolonged photogrammetry process in minutes.
We can pour over all the technicalities.
We often spend too much time trying to worry about the technology
and that was the thing is Luma AI, the app, had already done that. They'd already replaced Nerf processing with Gaussian splatting so you could get better results. And they just did that in the background while we're all talking about it. And on a phone, that new app is now using the latest AI technique to create 3D geometry. It's happened.
So circling back a little bit in terms of the experience and so on, we started off the idea of talking about immersive audio, and I think it's worth picking that back up again because it is really important and something that's often forgotten, mainly because, we've had some experience of immersive audio when we go to sort of cinemas and get Dolby, etc., etc. But now, with everything we're doing in terms of location-based AR and physically knowing where an object actually is within a space, you can do exactly the same with audio. So you can physically know where that particular person is singing from or that instrument is coming from, and then you can shape your audio to deliver as if it sounds like it's coming from there rather than from the two speakers that happen to be at the side. That's really interesting, as is the fact that we can then change the environment that's perceived to within a space. So this auditorium here, we could say, might sound like a classical auditorium in a theatre in Rome, or we can make it sound like an intimate little space, just using audio and audio processing to achieve that. And we forget that audio is so important from an emotive connection to what we're actually doing. Yes, visual's great, and we get a lot of stimuli from that, but actually, once you combine audio and visual together, you have something which is extremely powerful.
I think that's the key to true immersiveness is, yes, we've got the large-scale content, we can fill the whole thing with content, we can, send bomb you, we can send sense into the venue, we can actually splat water on you, but if you want to be truly immersed, spatial audio is very, very important. Like there's a guy on TikTok, I know, if try and find him and you've got earbuds and the first time I heard it, I kind of jumped out of my chair because someone's knocking on a door and it actually sounds like it's coming from behind you. And I find myself looking around and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, that's like spatial audio in an immersive experience. Like, don't forget about that because that is the glue. And this is coming from a video guy, right? I've never really been interested in audio, but I'm starting to get there because that's the glue that brings that experience together. If, like, going back to, like, say BBC Earth, if they'd worked on that a little bit and they'd kind of guided you through that experience, oh my God, I would have gone every day. But now you're just going to watch large-scale projection. Spatial audio is, I think...
It does become, you said the glue, it is very much like glue, that glue, which holds together. And I think, if anybody's interested, what D&B, the parent company of White Light, has a product called Soundscape, and we would welcome anybody to come and experience that and just come and play with the technology and understand how it can be brought to any scale of project. We're not saying here we're talking about the big concerts and so on. small rooms, we've introduced this technology, and it's just brought that presentation space to life.
It also addresses a big accessibility question.
Yep.
If there's an audio component, a really immersive audio component, you've instantly made your content accessible to people with visual impairment.
And I think
it's an important part of that.
What's also interesting there is when we're going to move slightly onto this with sort of bringing the next bit in terms of the AR revolution and so on. But we've also got another potential, which we're not there yet because technology's not there, of creating this digital twin, of having a live experience and having audio and everything going on in a normal way and adding AR overlay and so on. So your audience in the space has an experience, but then you also have an alternative audience, or a different audience online, who's consuming in a slightly different way, but maybe still in real time. And I think that's one of the challenges we have at the moment, is that real-time element. That's also got the spatial audio experience, that also feels like they're part and parcel of the space and can interact with what's going on. That is the next step in terms of how we're going to translate or create a bridge between the live experience and some form of online. And I'm not saying that's the M word, that's not the metaverse word. That is a very different style of presentation. But it is, it's somewhere that we're trying to go to. So, looking at personalised content, Michael, you popped a couple videos.
I did, yeah. I don't know if they'll play, but
we'll have a go.
Let's talk about digital fashion, right? Because 2024, it is going to be there, right? Tommy Hilfiger did a beautiful demo there, and it's actually in play, where you go and stand in front of a mirror and you get fitted virtual clothing, right? You don't have to try it on anymore. Now, the question is, do we want to live in a world where but it does work. If you've got a certain jacket and you want to see it in a different color, the algorithm could be so programmed that you go and stand in front of the mirror and you get fitted virtual clothing. You will see, and we're actually working on one, in 2024, you will see a digital fashion show where there's no models, the clothing will be there, and it will feel like it's believable. So taking AR further, combining that with clever storytelling, and obviously selling your product, right? But doing these technologies on a larger scale, an individual experience, is going to be just as important as opening it up for thousands at the same time.
And it's that new audience, isn't it? Once we open up to a new audience, a new connection with an organisation, a new connection with a brand, a new opportunity commercially for that organisation and that brand. But it doesn't have to be, I think we've sometimes got too hung up on the fact that we try and recreate something rather than producing something which is unique for one audience and then different for another audience. There was another one you popped in.
That's
mine.
That's
yours.
one,
It might not be important.
I think it's
I'll run on to that. And
this is the snap activation that I spoke about earlier. So this is what it looked like on the stadium AR screens and on the broadcast stream. So they were able to take over the whole stadium, bring a cruise ship in. It's quite a cartoonified aesthetic that was delivered, but the tech stack that did that is connected to Snap's infrastructure, so the on-device capability of personalizing that, of everybody having their own viewpoint of that moment, or of having their own ability to interact with it in some way.
it seemed they could have their own character, couldn't they?
Yeah.
But that's the next step. You're playing to someone sitting on the opposite side of the stadium, and
So
it's you against him, played out on a large canvas.
And then it becomes about, the creatives. It's like giving this to Michael and going, how do you make something that's not me playing around with this in a tech demo, but is something with the storytelling element. So coming back to that, the tech to deliver this exists now. It's now about the creative applications and getting this out there to be able to deliver those.
So I think that's a good segue onto, because I appreciate we've only got 10 minutes left, and I would like to try and get, if possible, a bit of Q&A in, if anybody's got some interest or got some questions. But how do we make this happen? Because we've now, I mentioned earlier, new language, new opportunities. We're at a bit of a pivotal point at the moment where we have technology, and we just need to allow consumers an opportunity to start defining how they want to experience that, the next generation. We've got the next 5 years, we've got the next 10 years, we've got beyond. How do you think we make the next steps on making this happen?
So I don't know how to answer that. Just go out and do it. But that's a simplified. I appreciate that's a simplified answer. It's all about who's going to come up with the most clever idea. Who's going to win the race to win over the consumer or the target audience? Who's going to come up with the best idea?
Yep.
And then, like, you know, choose what platform to deliver that on.
Yeah. I think one of the challenges is you mentioned platform. One of the challenges we have at the moment also is there's no one place you go for any of this. And that is a barrier to entry, you know, not that I'm saying, you know, promoting Netflix, but Netflix is one of the first to bring out something which sat on everybody's screen and you could pick everything you wanted to watch. We haven't got anywhere like that to make it really simple for, you know, new generation technology and consuming things.
But I mentioned the A acronym, you know, that thing we
Well,
don't want
that
to mention.
one I'm not allowed to
But
mention. Yeah.
That democratises content creation and pulls it away from the big gimmicky show pieces that people do. Because having worked in kind of all this amazing technology for so many years, you get the gimmick one-off, you know, a big brand decides to do a 360 video and then goes, right, tick, done that, I'm never going to use it again. Discard, what's the next thing? By with democratizing this and putting it into the hands of people with mobile phones and lowering that barrier to entry into it, then there will be much more content out there and the content will get richer because there's more to choose from and say, that's good, that's bad, I really like that. It becomes pervasive in all that we're watching. And that's the only thing I can see getting better. Making it happen is going to
so the next TikTok effectively of where that's going to go.
Yeah, but you know, CoSTAR announced this morning. Centres like I've got it, getting people in and getting hands-on. We have to do more of that. We have to do more of that, and it's only going to get easier. And I think, you know, we're in for a really exciting time because people often ask, what's the next thing? I've got no idea what the next thing is.
I think we shouldn't be prescribing but we should be giving people the tools and the opportunity to develop that.
There was that conversation earlier on about, you know, people wanting to direct content. I don't think they want to direct the outcome because people love a story and an ending and all of that, but they want to direct the direction of content that it's going in. So, you know, fan content, you know, not being afraid of embracing, I'm going to say AI, is using it in meaningful ways and adopting it and not trying to ignore it and make it go away. It's just go, no, give it to me, I'm going to do something brilliant with it.
One of the other interesting things is things like, you know, a lot of the experiences, the large-scale experiences we've seen at the moment, is of things that have already been created, that we've just translated into a completely different format. Let's get some really indie work, you know, some really independent, really different ways of using creative technology.
The quality will come eventually, but now let's do the quick and dirty experiments that allow people to think, oh, if I do that in that way, not, oh, it looks lovely and it looks polished, or it's not photorealistic or whatever. It's that new model of coming together with content we can try really quickly and easily, and the quality bar will come.
And Peter, you know, obviously from a manufacturer stroke sort of workflow organisation that you are, how do you see the next 10 years going for yourself in terms of, you know, opportunities for new tech, different tech, faster tech?
Obviously, it's an incredibly exciting time. You know, we spoke earlier about the computing revolution in some of the earlier presentations, and you know, right now where we are with the power of the devices that we're able to make, the possibility that's ahead of us is really, really exciting. But it comes down to collaboration, right? You know, we can make amazing software, amazing hardware to drive that, but without the creatives, without the storytellers, without the operators, the people who understand how to interact with the rest of production, it's just a clever piece of technology for the sake of technology.
So we're saying, basically, from a collaboration, but we all need to talk more. We need to understand challenges, we need to understand opportunities, and we need to collectively, as an industry, start talking more together about how we can overcome and bring different things to the table.
There's an educational stage involved, like all of this AI, and
I know we can't mention
that it's confusing. It's confusing to the point where you're like, how am I going? Whoa, what is this?
Well, it's confusing. Yeah, it's just confusing because
there is an educational process involved, right? Let's keep doing what we're doing, but let's bring the tech people in sooner to kind of help understand what the possibilities are. Right? The hardware solution providers, the operators, the creatives, get talking sooner.
Yeah. And I think large corporations at the moment, I'm not going to name any names, but also are telling us how to do things from top down. Yeah. We have an opportunity here to tell the industry how we want things from bottom up. And I think that's an interesting challenge.
I was doing some one-to-one surgeries last week in Cardiff, and it was really intriguing to see how people coming to me. There was one particular There was a graphic designer that suddenly wanted to do the most complicated mixed reality experience, and making that leap from being a graphic designer, a very talented graphic designer, to an MR specialist was kind of like, how are you going to do that? You're never going to do that with some kind of like small pots of funding. Concentrate on what you know best. And I said, have you thought about animation as the next stage? And we need to be honest as people with technology and agnostic. So we're not trying to sell the top-end solution because we need to shift units and make it profitable. It's about being honest with people and saying, you don't need a metaverse, you don't need a VR, you can just do this and start exploring technology.
Yeah.
It's conversation, like you're saying, an honest conversation.
Honest conversation, absolutely. I agree completely. I think we've got 5 minutes, so I would like to try and open up to some questions if anybody does have some. One of the things that White Light's trying to do, and I'm allowed to say that I think now, is we are trying to give people the opportunity to play, like that you are. Yeah. So we're very proud to say that we've done about to open an experience centre ourselves within the Science Museum in London, which is both got soundscape and got VP and got mocap and all sorts of other technologies in. And it's an opportunity for people to come in on all sorts of different levels. So it's the idea being that sort of people that have got projects, agencies can come in and explore and try ideas and so on out. It's also an opportunity for the Science Museum themselves to use the technology to be able to start doing some of their internal comms and presentations and broadcasts and so on. And also, when it's not being used, it can become a visitor attraction. So the sort of the next generation that we want to get excited can actually come through and see and explore and understand, oh, that's a camera, that's a VP screen, that connects this way and so on and so on. And that's something that a corporate organisation has done as a standalone in order to try and help this next generation. Because it is an educational piece. I think that's one of the biggest foundations is the next 5 years, is resetting education from that sort of 11 plus age and getting people excited with what the new opportunities are in the industry. Question. So let's do that. Have we got a mic? We need to do the mic thing because it's being streamed. Can you just say your name and where you're from as well, please?
Hello, I'm Corinne Audibert. I'm a consultant with a background in law. So I'm interested in pivoting my career, possibly, in the creative industry. I'm wondering if we're thinking about doing bottom-up content, whether we should not address the fact that basically peoples behave according to various psychological types. I'm thinking of the Myers-Briggs, and whether the fact that we could remember people are introverted or extroverted with a strong appetite for sensory interactions or not, whether that shouldn't be a consideration when we create an immersive experience. Some people have a dominant sense, which could be auditory or it could be visual. What about people who are kinesthetic?
Mostly, really interesting.
Mostly in the way they learn. And I'm thinking about the audio-visual space. It's very powerful when you try to reenact an epic battle, how basically the audience could be on the battlefield with a variety of attractive devices to live it and maybe change the course of it. And then you could be visual, kinesthetic, and auditory.
But I think one of the key things that we talked about, I think, is the personalisation of it. Often we're in this phase at the moment where we're trying to present what we think people want. It's not necessarily what everybody wants. It's just a generalisation of what we think the new immersive presentation or game or whatever should be. The next step is that you can then stop and say, that's not what I want. I need this within it, or I need it to be faster, or I need to change the colour, or I need to have spatial audio because that's the way, and set your own environment up to be able to consume in that way.
And we're learning that now, because we've got more and more people coming together with technology, and now we're having to think about different people and the way that they, psychologically, physiologically consume content and limitations on that. But as the technology gets better, it's going to be easier to dial down one thing and emphasize another thing to adapt them when they come in, and they might be able to have control over that to sort of, with glasses on that could dim the light if it's too bright and emphasize the audio aspect. I don't know, but it's a very relevant
But we do that when we
conversation.
get home. We make a decision immediately of turning the dimmer switch on, or whatever, or closing the curtains because we're in that sort of mood. And I think it's that personalisation which we probably don't. We've got probably time for one more question. So yes. Can you again just say who you are and where you're from, please?
Yes, thank you. Nick Owen from the Mighty Creatives in Leicester. Wanted to talk a little bit about the learning potential of this for young performers or new performers, because you're learning your guitar or you're singing or you're acting, and often you'll see on open mic nights people are intent on their guitar technique. They're missing the audience connection, which is where things really kind of connect. I'm wondering, is there anything out there that actually would help a fledgling performer to understand how their audience that are there in front of them here and now are actually engaging with them? Is there something out there that does that?
We just worked on a project, I can't give too many details, but it's basically a performance simulator using Unreal Engine technology and projection, where a performer can see how an audience is reacting, and dynamic audience members can be dialed in as they're playing, so you can use technology like that
we found
to train.
We found with Smart Stage, when we were originally, we did a number of sort of music videos and performers, and one of the things we wanted to try and do is to change it from being just a presentation space to, can we do a piece of theatre from it? I did a piece of dance from it. All those sorts of I didn't personally dance, but I did a piece of dance from it, and it was that sort of, once you get people in the space and they're surrounded by, and you can bring other audiences in virtually, and you can have a live, that's when they start connecting with people.
No. I'm not sure how much I can say about it because it's for a client, but it's in a very well-established school. So it will be training the performers of tomorrow. But
I've been given a little more time, so are there any other questions in the audience at all?
Oh, one up there.
Oh, sorry. Right
Okay. We might, if you tell me, and then I'm going to repeat it.
It's sort of something for having a response rather than a question per se, but just going back to when you were talking about people who experience concerts and things through their phones and they're not really experiencing it. Everyone films it and stuff. I was literally at a concert the other day and I do that, but I think you were talking about having someone watch it through VR goggles and having someone watch it on another screen, and that recreating that experience. But I suppose I just wanted to posit the idea that you can't. The reason people film things, or the reason I film things, is because when you watch it back, you remember how you felt when you were there, and you wouldn't necessarily film the whole concert, but you remember the atmosphere, you remember the people around you. There was a girl next to me crying. I gave her a tissue. I remember that, and you can't recreate that without having been there.
Without having a record. So the comment was that we mentioned earlier on about filming a concert, and that some people actually just film, and rather than actually watching it themselves, spend all their time filming. And often the film is a recollection of that experience and also that level of emotion that you experienced at that particular time. And therefore, if you don't film it, then you don't necessarily have that same emotive connection. And I think that's where things like goggles and that sort of thing are going to become, because they could be filming all the time.
But we're not saying, Jason, don't do it.
No.
We're saying they're doing it anyway.
Doing it anyway, yeah.
So
How
embrace
can we use that?
Yeah.
How can we make that better? Right? They're doing it anyway, right? And you can't stop that. So how do we build on that? How do we add another level to that? How do we, as a corporate company, how do we plug our message into it? Because that's interesting for us, right? So.
But I think it's also it is that memory of maybe you don't need to do that. Maybe in the future, it's going to naturally happen because there's going to be a small camera on everybody's glasses or whatever. So you don't need to physically do something. You can be a bit more present in the actual experience yourself.
Or you can get a much richer capture of that experience, because you're not just capturing a flat video now. You could be capturing the spatial audio on your phone, the depth of it, and get that real sense of that space that you were in. So it's just putting another tool in your hands if you want to record content like that. We've always taken photographs. Photographs are memories. That's what we do. And by richer capturing of things, we'll be able to post those memories online and share them and inhabit that space more. It's just going to give us richer content to share.
If you know exactly where you're standing, you could potentially go to a volumetric space online, go stand in that same space and experience it the exact same way. Through your goggles,
lots of people have got their phones out at the concert. You could then coordinate how many of them are all filming that moment at the same time, correlate all of those phones from the data they collected online and build a really meaningful experience out of it.
You don't
Then
have to go to Wembley
shared
at all.
collaboration.
Well done. Everybody stays
No
home.
more stale sandwich.
But you could get enough capture of that space to then recreate it online and then put your family in it later on and go, oh, it was amazing
Well, you
at
can
this
cut,
point.
you can cut
know,
everything
why
out.
not?
You can take an image and cut pretty much everything out of it nowadays. So, yeah, you can do what. Is there any? We got 1 more minute. Any other questions before we close? No, brilliant. Okay, well, I think, really, really interesting discussion. We're all around if anybody wants to come and find us a little bit later. So I'm from White Light. You can find White Light's details on the web. Please do connect with me if you wish, and everybody else in exactly the same way. If anybody's interested in coming along, it'll be from February, March next year once the actual Experience Centre is set up to the Science Museum to explore that. Please do. We're really interested in ideas, and I think that's one of the key things that coming out of this. We want to listen to the industry. We want to understand what the challenges are, what the opportunities are, how you as consumers, how you as creatives, et cetera, want to take technology and want to use technology. So we're very much listening. So thank you very much to Michael. Thank you very much to Alex and to Peter. I hope you've had a great afternoon, and thank you to Beyond for letting us be here.